From a boy lost in the sky to a man reclaiming justice, Elias's journey exposed a sinister plot. Thanks for listening. Like, share and subscribe with notifications on to catch our newest videos. Don't miss the next thrilling tale. The airplane shuddered violently, a scream of metal and wind tearing through the cabin as lightning cracked outside. Elias, 9 years old, clutched his mother's hand, his wide eyes darting to the window where rain lashed the glass. The cabin lights flickered, plunging the passengers into momentary darkness. A woman across the aisle shrieked, her coffee cup shattering on the floor. "It's just turbulence," a flight attendant barked, but her voice trembled. Elias felt his stomach lurch as the plane dipped again, the seatbelt digging into his waist. His mother, Clara, leaned closer, her voice a strained whisper. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just hold on." But the fear in her eyes betrayed her words. Another jolt rocked the plane, and a deafening boom echoed from the rear. Passengers gasped, some praying, others clutching armrests. Elias turned to the window again, catching a glimpse of someone moving outside in the storm, a shadow against the lightning. Was it a trick of the light? His heart pounded as he squeezed Clara's hand tighter. Then, the cabin door at the front slammed open, and a man in a dark uniform stormed in, his face obscured by a cap pulled low. "Stay seated," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The passengers froze, but Elias couldn't tear his eyes away. The man moved with purpose, weaving through the aisle, his gloved hand brushing the seats. He stopped near Elias's row, his gaze locking onto the boy for a split second. Elias felt a chill, like ice water flooding his veins. The man's lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile before he turned and vanished toward the rear of the plane. "Mom, who was that?" Elias whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm. Clara didn't answer, her eyes fixed on the spot where the man had disappeared. The plane lurched again, and the overhead compartments rattled, one popping open to spill a suitcase into the aisle. Screams erupted as the cabin tilted sharply. Elias's ears popped, and a strange pressure built in his chest, like the air itself was pressing down on him. He glanced at his mother, but her face was pale, her lips moving silently as if in prayer. Then, without warning, a blinding flash filled the cabin, followed by a sound like the world splitting apart. Elias's vision blurred, his head spinning as the plane seemed to twist around him. He reached for Clara, but his hand grasped only air. "Mom!" he screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the roar. When the lights flickered back on, Elias was gone. His seatbelt hung limp, the buckle unfastened. Clara's scream pierced the cabin, raw and guttural, as she clawed at the empty seat. "Elias, where's my son?" The passengers around her stared, some in shock, others whispering. The flight attendant rushed over, her face ashen. "Ma'am, please calm down. He must be here." But a frantic search of the row revealed nothing, no trace of the boy. Clara's hands trembled as she tore through her bag, pulling out Elias's jacket, still warm from his body. "He was right here," she sobbed, her voice breaking. The plane stabilized, the storm outside easing, but the cabin buzzed with panic. A man in a suit, seated a few rows back, stood and approached the flight attendant, his voice low but firm. "Check the cameras. Now." The attendant hesitated, then nodded, disappearing toward the cockpit. Clara clung to Elias's jacket, her mind racing. She replayed the moment before the flash, the man in the dark uniform, his eerie smile, the way he'd looked at Elias. Had he done something? Her heart thudded as she stood, ignoring the protests of another attendant, and staggered toward the rear of the plane. The door to the galley was ajar, and she pushed it open, her breath hitching. Inside, a tray of drinks had spilled, glass shards glinting on the floor. But something else caught her eye. A small, crumpled piece of paper tucked beneath a cart. She knelt, her fingers shaking as she unfolded it. Scrawled in hasty ink were the words, "They take what they need." Clara's blood ran cold. She shoved the note into her pocket and turned, only to collide with the man in the suit from earlier. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his tone calm but edged with warning. "Who are you?" Clara demanded, her voice shaking. "What's happening to my son?" The man's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "My name's Victor. I'm with aviation security. We're going to find him. But you need to trust me." Clara wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something in his voice made her pause. She followed him back to her seat, her mind a storm of fear and suspicion. Hours later, the plane landed in Paris, the storm now a distant memory. But for Clara, the nightmare was just beginning. The airline officials met her at the gate, their faces grim. "Mrs. Voss, we've reviewed the footage," one said, a woman with a clipped accent. "Your son boarded the plane, but there's no record of him leaving." Clara's knees buckled, and Victor caught her arm. "That's impossible," she cried. "He was with me." The official hesitated, then continued. "We believe it's possible he was ejected during the turbulence. A rare but tragic accident." Clara's scream echoed through the terminal. "No, he was here. Someone took him." The officials exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pity and skepticism. Victor stepped forward, his voice low. "Show me the footage." In a small security office, they watched the grainy video, Elias boarding with Clara, sitting by the window, then the chaos of the storm. But one frame froze Clara's heart-a-blurry figure, the man in the dark uniform, leaning over Elias's seat just before the flash. When the camera cut back, Elias was gone. "Who is that man?" Clara demanded, pointing at the screen. The official shifted uncomfortably. "We don't know. He's not on our crew list." Victor's jaw tightened. "Then you've got a bigger problem than a missing boy." As Clara stood, clutching Elias's jacket, she made a silent vow. She would find her son, no matter what it took. The note in her pocket burned against her skin, its words a haunting promise of secrets yet to be uncovered. They take what they need. But who were they, and what did they want with her son? Clara's hands trembled as she clutched the crumpled note, its words searing into her mind. They take what they need. The Paris airport buzzed around her, a blur of travelers and flashing cameras, but she felt like she was drowning in silence. Elias was gone, vanished from a sealed airplane at 30,000 feet, and the airline's explanation turbulence, an impossible accident rang hollow. She stood in the security office, staring at the frozen frame of the mysterious man in the dark uniform, his face obscured, but his presence undeniable. Victor, the aviation security officer, paced behind her, his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders in a language she couldn't place. "Find out who he is," Clara demanded, her voice hoarse from screaming. The airline official, a woman named Miss Laurent, shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Voss, we're doing everything we can. The footage is inconclusive." Clara's eyes blazed. "Inconclusive? My son is gone, and you're telling me a man who shouldn't exist was standing over him." Victor hung up his phone, his jaw tight. "The crew manifest doesn't list anyone matching his description, but I've got a contact pulling passenger records. If he was on that plane, we'll find him." Clara didn't trust him. Not fully, but she had no choice. She shoved the note into her pocket and stormed out, ignoring Miss Laurent's protests. The terminal was chaos, reporters swarming as news of the missing boy spread. Clara pushed through, her heart pounding, until she reached a quiet corner. She sank to the floor, pulling out Elias's jacket, its faint scent of his shampoo breaking her all over again. She couldn't lose him. Not like this. A shadow fell over her, and she looked up to see a woman with sharp eyes and a notepad. "Clara Voss? I'm Lena Korsgaard, investigative journalist. I heard about your son. I think there's more to this." Clara stiffened, wary. "I don't need vultures circling my grief." Lena knelt, her voice low. "I'm not here for a story. I've been tracking irregularities in airline operations for years. Your son's case, it's not the first. Kids go missing on flights, and the airlines bury it." Clara's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Lena glanced around, then pulled out a tablet. 6 years ago, a girl vanished on a transatlantic flight. Same story. On the plane. Never got off. The airline claimed she fell through a hatch. No body. No proof. I dug deeper and found encrypted files from the airline's servers. They mentioned a group called Orion. Ever heard of it? Clara shook her head, her mind racing. Lena continued, "Orion's a shadow network. No one knows who runs it, but they're tied to high-level cover-ups. I think they're involved with Elias." Clara's fingers tightened around the note. "They take what they need." "Help me find him," she said, her voice steel. Lena nodded. "Meet me tonight. I've got a source who can crack those files." That evening, Clara slipped into a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of Paris, her nerves raw. Lena was already there, sitting with a wiry man who introduced himself as Nico, a former hacker turned whistleblower. "The airline's lying," Nico said, his fingers flying over a laptop. I pulled deleted footage from the flight's black box. Look, the grainy video showed the man in the dark uniform again, but this time he was dragging Elias through a service hatch during the storm. Clara's heart stopped. Where did they take him? Nico hesitated. The hatch leads to a cargo bay, but there's no footage of him leaving the plane. It's like he vanished mid-flight. Clara's vision blurred with tears, but rage steadied her. "Then we search the plane. Now." Lena grabbed her arm. "It's not that simple. The plane's already back in service, and Orion's people are watching. We need to move carefully." But Clara was done waiting. She tracked down Victor, who was at the airport hangar, and confronted him. "You knew, didn't you? About the hatch, about that man." Victor's eyes darkened. "I'm trying to help, Clara, but you're stepping into something bigger than you realize." She didn't care. With Lena's help, she and Nico infiltrated the hangar that night, slipping past guards to reach the plane. The cargo bay was cold, its metal walls echoing with their footsteps. Clara's flashlight caught something, a child's shoe, scuffed and small, wedged behind a crate. Elias's. She clutched it, her resolve hardening. But before she could search further, floodlights blazed, and armed men in black tactical gear stormed the bay. "Hands up!" one shouted. Clara froze, but Lena acted fast, tossing a smoke grenade from her bag. Chaos erupted as the bay filled with choking fog. Clara scrambled behind a crate, her heart pounding, as gunfire cracked overhead. Nico hacked the hangar's system, plunging it into darkness, giving them a chance to escape. They fled into the night, Clara clutching the shoe, her mind burning with questions. Who was Orion? Why did they want Elias? And how had they pulled off the impossible? Back at Lena's safe house, Nico decrypted more files, revealing a chilling truth. Orion wasn't just a network, it was a machine, a global operation targeting children with specific traits. Elias matched their profile: high intelligence, isolated upbringing. The files hinted at a facility, a place where the children were taken, but its location was encoded. Clara's phone buzzed. "A blocked number," she answered, and a distorted voice rasped, "Stop digging, or you'll never see him again." The line went dead. Clara's hands shook, but she looked at Lena and Nico. "They're scared. That means we're close." Lena nodded, but her eyes were grim. "Orion doesn't make empty threats. If we keep going, we're all targets." Clara didn't flinch. "Let them come. I'm getting my son back." As they planned their next move, Clara felt the weight of the note in her pocket, its words a constant reminder. They take what they need, but she would take back what was hers, no matter the cost. The fight was just beginning, and Orion had no idea what they'd unleashed in a mother's wrath. The Bolivian sun beat down on the cracked tarmac of El Alto International Airport, where a young man stood barefoot, his clothes tattered, clutching a faded photograph. His eyes, haunted yet resolute, scanned the bustling terminal as if searching for something or someone. The photo showed a woman with kind eyes, her smile frozen in time. A security officer approached, his hand resting on his radio. "Senor, you need to come with me," he said, eyeing the man's disheveled appearance. The young man didn't resist, his voice soft but steady. "I'm looking for her," he said, holding up the photo. "My mother." Within hours, the airport was abuzz. A fingerprint scan sent shockwaves through the system. The man's prints matched those of Elias Voss, a boy who vanished on a flight 13 years ago. The news reached Clara in Paris, where she sat with Lena in their safe house, poring over Orion's encrypted files. Her phone rang, and Victor's voice crackled through. "Clara, you need to get to Bolivia. Now." Her heart leaped, fear and hope colliding. "Is it him?" she whispered. Victor's pause was agonizing. "The prints say yes, but he's not what you expect." Clara didn't care. She and Lena booked the next flight, Nico staying behind to keep digging into Orion's network. The 20-hour journey was a blur of anxiety, Clara clutching Elias's shoe. Its scuff marks a lifeline to her son. In La Paz, they were met by Victor, who looked grimmer than ever. "He's in a holding room," he said, leading them through the airport security wing. "But Orion's already here. We need to move fast." Clara's stomach twisted. "What do you mean they're here?" Victor's eyes darted to the crowd. 2 men tailed you from Paris. Professionals. If they know he's Elias, they'll kill to keep him quiet. Clara pushed past him, her pulse racing, and entered the holding room. The young man looked up, his face gaunt, his dark hair matted. But those eyes, Elias's eyes, pierced her soul. "Mom?" he rasped, the word breaking her. She rushed to him, tears streaming, and pulled him into her arms. "Elias, oh God, it's you." He stiffened, his embrace hesitant, as if unaccustomed to touch. Lena watched, her journalist's instincts kicking in. "Elias, what happened to you? Where have you been?" He pulled back, glancing at the photo still in his hand. "I don't know everything. They kept me in a place cages, machines. I escaped. Took me years." His voice cracked, and Clara's heart shattered. Victor interrupted. "We can't stay here. The men outside are closing in." As if on cue, the lights flickered, and an alarm blared. Victor drew a pistol, motioning them toward a side exit. "Move." They sprinted through a service corridor, Elias stumbling but keeping pace. Clara held his hand, refusing to let go. Gunshots echoed behind them, and Lena cursed, pulling a taser from her bag. "Orion's not playing games," she muttered. The corridor opened to a loading dock, where a black SUV screeched to a stop. 2 men in tactical gear leaped out, their faces masked. "Get down!" Victor shouted, firing at the nearest. The man ducked, returning fire, and a bullet grazed Clara's arm. She gasped but didn't stop, dragging Elias toward a stack of crates. Lena tackled the second man, her taser crackling, but he threw her off, his knife flashing. Elias moved like a ghost, his bare feet silent as he grabbed a metal pipe and swung it, cracking the man's skull. Clara stared, horrified yet awed. "Elias, how?" He didn't answer, his eyes wild, scanning for threats. Victor dispatched the first man, but more footsteps echoed from the corridor. "They've got reinforcements," he yelled. They piled into an airport maintenance truck, Victor at the wheel, and tore through the loading area, tires squealing. The SUV gave chase, its headlights glaring in the dusk. Clara bandaged her arm with a torn sleeve, her mind reeling. Elias sat beside her, his breathing ragged. "They trained me," he said suddenly, "to fight, to survive, but I never forgot you." He touched the photo, and Clara's tears fell anew. The truck swerved as Victor dodged a hail of bullets, the SUV gaining. Lena leaned out the window, firing a flare gun she'd grabbed from the dock. The flare hit the SUV's windshield, forcing it to veer off, but not for long. "We need to lose them," Lena shouted. Victor took a sharp turn into the labyrinthine streets of La Paz, the truck rattling over cobblestones. The city's neon lights blurred past, but the SUV was relentless. Elias pointed to an alley. "There, it's narrow." Victor didn't hesitate, jerking the wheel. The truck scraped through, sparks flying, but the SUV was too wide, crashing into the walls. They emerged onto a hillside road, the city sprawling below. Victor slowed, checking the mirrors. "We're clear, for now." Clara turned to Elias, studying his face. He was her son, but the years had carved something else into him, something hard, broken. "What did they do to you?" she whispered. He looked away, his voice barely audible. "They wanted soldiers. Kids like me, we were experiments." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Experiments for what?" Elias shook his head. "I don't know, but they're still out there, and they'll come for me." Victor pulled into an abandoned warehouse, their temporary refuge. Lena patched into Nico's secure line, updating him. "Elias is the key," she said. "Orion's hunting him because he escaped their program." Clara held Elias close, her resolve hardening. "They won't touch you again." But as night fell, a distant engine roared, and headlights pierced the warehouse's shadows. Orion wasn't done. Clara gripped Elias's hand, ready to fight for her son, no matter what it took. The warehouse's shadows swallowed the dim light of a flickering bulb, casting jagged patterns across Elias's face as he sat, knees drawn to his chest, the faded photo of his mother trembling in his hands. Clara watched him, her heart aching at the stranger her son had become, his eyes hollow, his movements sharp, like a caged animal waiting for the next blow. Outside, the distant hum of La Paz's streets was a deceptive calm. Orion's hunters were out there, closing in. Lena paced, her phone pressed to her ear, coordinating with Nico, while Victor stood guard at the door, his pistol ready. Clara knelt beside Elias, her voice soft. "Tell me, sweetheart, what happened to you?" Elias's gaze drifted to the photo, his fingers tracing his mother's smile. "I don't know where to start," he murmured. "It's pieces, flashes." Clara squeezed his hand, ignoring the pain in her bandaged arm. "Start anywhere. I'm here." He took a shaky breath, and the warehouse seemed to fade as his mind slipped back to the dark. It began with the flight, the storm, the man in the dark uniform dragging him through the service hatch. Elias fought, kicking and screaming, but a needle pierced his arm, and the world dissolved into black. He woke in a cold, sterile room, the air thick with antiseptic. He was strapped to a table, wires snaking from his temples to a machine that hummed like a living thing. Men in white coats loomed over him, their voices clinical. Subject 47, high cognitive potential, ideal for Phase 2. Elias didn't understand, but fear choked him. He called for his mother, but no one answered. Days blurred into weeks, then years, in a sprawling underground facility, concrete walls, endless corridors, and screams echoing at night. There were others, children like him, their eyes dull with resignation. They were trained combat, stealth, endurance pushed to their limits in brutal simulations. "You're being rebuilt," a man with a scar across his face told them, "for a purpose greater than yourselves." Elias hated him, hated the pain, but he clung to the photo of his mother, stolen from his pocket during the flight and slipped back to him by a sympathetic guard. It was his anchor, the only thing keeping him human. The training was relentless. Elias learned to fight, to move silently, to endure pain that would break most adults. But he watched others fall, kids who couldn't keep up, who vanished after failing tests. He heard whispers of experiments, of machines that burrowed into their minds, rewriting who they were. One night, he saw a girl, no older than 10, dragged away after a failed simulation. Her screams haunted him. "I swore I wouldn't end up like her," Elias said, his voice breaking. Clara's tears fell, but she stayed silent, letting him speak. He described the facility's security, cameras in every corner, biometric locks, guards armed with tasers, and worse. Escape seemed impossible, but Elias studied the patterns guard shifts, blind spots, the hum of the ventilation system. He befriended a boy named Mateo, a wiry kid with a knack for electronics. Together, they planned. "We'll get out," Mateo promised, his eyes bright with hope. It took years. Elias was 15 when they made their move. Mateo hacked a control panel, disabling a section of cameras, while Elias stole a guard's keycard during a training drill. They crawled through the ventilation shafts, their bodies scraped raw, hearts pounding as alarms blared. They reached a service tunnel, but guards were waiting. Mateo shoved Elias forward. "Run, don't look back!" Gunshots rang out, and Mateo's scream cut off. Elias ran, tears blinding him, until he stumbled into a jungle, the facility hidden beneath its canopy. He didn't know where he was. South America, he guessed, but he kept moving, surviving on instinct and the skills they'd forced into him. The photo of his mother guided him, a beacon through the dark. He hitched rides, stole food, and avoided capture, always moving toward a city, a place where he could find her. "I didn't know if you were still looking," Elias said, his voice raw. "But I had to try." Clara pulled him close, her sobs shaking them both. "I never stopped, Elias. Never." Lena approached, her face grim. "That facility, it's Orion's doing. Those experiments, they're building something. Soldiers, maybe, or worse." Victor turned from the door. "We need to know what they wanted with you, Elias. What's Phase 2? Elias shook his head. "I don't know. They never told us. But there was a room, locked, heavily guarded. I heard machines inside and voices, kids' voices, but wrong, like they weren't human anymore." Clara's blood ran cold. Before she could speak, a low rumble shook the warehouse. Headlights pierced the windows, and Victor cursed. "They found us." Tires screeched outside, and boots hit the ground. Lena grabbed her taser, while Elias stood, his body tense, the pipe from the airport still in his hand. Clara clutched his arm. "Stay with me." He nodded, but his eyes were those of a soldier, not a son. The warehouse door exploded inward, shrapnel flying. Men in tactical gear stormed in, their rifles raised. "Down! Now!" one shouted. Victor fired first, dropping one, but a dart hit his shoulder, and he collapsed, convulsing. Lena lunged, her taser sparking, but a blow sent her sprawling. Clara screamed, shielding Elias, but he moved faster, swinging the pipe with lethal precision. 2 men fell, but more poured in. "Run!" Elias yelled, pulling Clara toward a back exit. They burst into the night, the jungle's edge looming. Gunfire chased them, bullets tearing through leaves. Elias led the way, his bare feet silent on the dirt. But Clara stumbled, her arm throbbing. He caught her, his strength unnatural for his lean frame. Behind them, the warehouse burned, flames licking the sky. Lena emerged, dragging Victor, her face bloodied but fierce. "Keep going," she shouted. They plunged into the jungle, the sounds of pursuit fading but never stopping. Elias's memories were a map now, guiding them through the dark. But the truth of what Orion had done to him, and what they still wanted, loomed larger than ever. Clara held his hand, vowing to end this, no matter the cost. The jungle swallowed them whole, its canopy a suffocating shroud of green that blocked the moonlight. Elias led the way, his bare feet navigating the tangled roots with eerie precision, while Clara clung to his arm, her breath ragged from the wound in her shoulder. Behind them, Lena half-carried Victor, whose face was pale from the tranquilizer dart's effects. The air was thick with humidity, the buzz of insects drowned out by the distant crackle of radios. Orion's hunters were closing in. Elias's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the darkness. "Keep moving," he whispered, his voice low but commanding. Clara marveled at his instincts, honed by years of Orion's brutal training, but it broke her heart to see her son so changed. The warehouse fire still burned in the distance, its orange glow a beacon for their pursuers. A branch snapped nearby, and Elias froze, raising a hand. Clara's pulse spiked as she heard it two boots crunching through the undergrowth. Victor, struggling to stay upright, drew his pistol with a shaky hand. "How many?" he rasped. Lena's eyes narrowed, her taser at the ready. "At least 6, maybe more." Elias pointed to a ravine ahead, its steep drop partially hidden by vines. "There, we can lose them." Without waiting, he pulled Clara toward it, their feet slipping on the muddy slope. The ravine was a gambler narrow, treacherous, with a river roaring below, but staying still meant death. They slid down, thorns tearing at their clothes, and hit the bottom hard. The icy water shocked Clara's senses, but Elias yanked her up, urging her forward. Gunfire erupted above, bullets shredding leaves as Orion's men reached the edge. Lena fired her flare gun upward, the blinding light scattering their aim, and Victor returned fire, his shots wild but enough to buy time. They waded through the river, its current pulling at their legs, until they reached a cluster of boulders. Elias shoved Clara behind one, his pipe still gripped like a lifeline. "Stay low," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Clara grabbed his wrist, her eyes fierce. "You're not fighting them alone." He hesitated, then nodded, a flicker of her sun shining through the soldier's mask. The hunters descended, their silhouettes darting through the mist. Elias moved first, silent as a shadow, and took down the nearest man with a single brutal strike to the throat. Clara's stomach churned, but she followed, picking up a fallen rifle, its weight foreign in her hands. Lena and Victor held the flank, their movements sluggish but determined. The fight was chaos grunts, screams, the metallic clang of Elias's pipe against a knife. Clara fired, her shot grazing a man's leg, and he collapsed, cursing. But more came, their radios crackling with orders. "Subject 47 located. Terminate all witnesses." Clara's blood ran cold. Subject 47, that was Elias. She glanced at him, now locked in a grapple with a towering mercenary. He was fast, lethal, but outnumbered. Lena screamed as a dart hit her arm, and she crumpled, her taser skittering into the water. Victor roared, tackling the shooter, but a boot to his ribs sent him sprawling. Clara's vision tunneled. She couldn't lose them, not Elias, not again. She aimed the rifle, her hands shaking, and fired, dropping another man. Elias broke free, his pipe slick with blood, and pulled her toward the river's bend. "We can't win this," he shouted. "Run!" They plunged deeper into the jungle, the river giving way to dense foliage. Clara's lungs burned, her wound throbbing, but Elias's grip kept her moving. Victor and Lena limped behind, barely conscious. The hunters' shouts faded, but helicopters thumped overhead, their searchlights slicing through the canopy. Elias led them into a cave, its mouth hidden by ferns. Inside, the air was damp, the walls slick with moss. Clara collapsed, gasping, while Elias checked the entrance. "They'll find us," Victor said, his voice weak. "We need a plan." Lena, fighting the dart's effects, nodded. "Elias, you said they trained you. What do they want? Why kids?" Elias leaned against the wall, his face haunted. "It's about control. They put things in our heads. Tech, maybe. I saw kids in that locked room wired up, like machines. They weren't themselves anymore." Clara's heart stopped. "They did that to you?" Elias shook his head. "Not fully. I fought it. But I feel it sometimes, like something still in me." He touched his temple, his eyes distant. Clara's rage flared. "Orion, they're monsters." Lena's voice was grim. "It's bigger than Orion. Those files Nico found, they mentioned a client. Someone funding this. Governments, maybe." Victor coughed, blood on his lips. "Then we expose them. But first, we survive." Elias rummaged through a hunter's pack they'd taken, pulling out a radio. He tuned it, catching fragments of Orion's chatter. "They're sweeping the jungle. We've got hours, maybe less." Clara's mind raced. "Elias, the flight. What happened after they took you?" He closed his eyes, piecing it together. "They moved me through the cargo bay. A smaller plane was waiting mid-air transfer. That's why no one saw me leave. They've done it before." Clara's breath caught. The truth was unraveling, each thread more horrifying. Orion hadn't just taken her son. They'd perfected a system to steal children from the sky. She stood, ignoring her pain. "We're ending this. For you, for the others." Elias met her gaze, a spark of defiance igniting. "There's a village, a day's trek from here. I passed it after I escaped. They might help us." The radio crackled, a voice cutting through. "All units, converge on Sector 5. Subject 47 is priority." Elias smashed the radio, his jaw tight. "We move now." They slipped out of the cave, the jungle alive with danger. Elias took point, his movements fluid, while Clara carried the rifle, her resolve steel. Lena supported Victor, their steps faltering but unbroken. The helicopters grew louder, their lights closer. A twig snapped behind them, and Elias spun, pipe raised. A figure emerged, not Orion, but a local, an old man with weathered skin. "You need help?" he asked in broken Spanish. Clara hesitated, but Elias nodded. "Please, they're after us." The man studied them, then beckoned. "Come, my people know the jungle." As they followed, Clara gripped Elias's hand, the truth about Orion burning in her chest. They'd stolen her son, but she'd tear their empire apart to save him and every child they'd taken. The jungle village was a fleeting sanctuary, its wooden huts nestled under the canopy, but Elias knew Orion's reach was relentless. Dawn broke, painting the sky blood red, as Clara bandaged her arm, her eyes fixed on her son. Elias stood at the village's edge, his bare feet planted in the dirt, the pipe still in his hand, his gaze distant. Lena sat with Victor, who was barely conscious, his breathing shallow from the beating in the jungle. The old man, Javier, who'd led them here, spoke in hushed tones with his people, their faces grim. "They come for you," Javier said, his English broken but clear. "Men with guns." Not the first time. Clara's heart sank. "Orion?" Javier nodded. "They take children. Years ago, my grandson." His voice trailed off, pain etching his face. Elias turned, his expression hardening. "Where did they take him?" Javier pointed to the mountains, their peaks shrouded in mist. "A place hidden, deep in stone, machines inside." Clara's pulse quickened. The facility Elias had described, the cages, the experiments. It was close. Lena, her arm still numb from the dart, pulled out her tablet, its screen cracked but functional. "Nico sent coordinates before we lost signal. There's an old mining complex, abandoned, but Orion's using it. That's where they're keeping the kids." Victor coughed, forcing himself upright. "We hit it. Now, before they move them." Clara gripped Elias's hand. "Are you ready for this?" His eyes met hers, a storm of fear and resolve. "I have to be. Javier's people armed their machetes, a few old rifles, and homemade explosives. The village couldn't fight Orion head-on, but they'd guide them through the jungle's secret paths. As they trekked, the air grew colder, the terrain rocky. Elias moved like a ghost, his training evident in every step, but Clara saw the boy beneath, the one who'd clung to her photo through years of torment. The mining complex loomed by dusk, its rusted gates guarded by men in tactical gear. Drones hummed overhead, their cameras glinting. Lena scanned the perimeter. Biometric locks, just like Elias said. We need a way in. Elias crouched, studying the guards' patterns. There's a ventilation shaft on the east side. I used one to escape. It's tight, but it'll work. Clara's stomach twisted. You're not going alone. He shook his head. You're hurt. I'm faster. Before she could argue, a drone spotlight swept over them, and a siren wailed. Intruders! A guard shouted. Bullets tore through the trees, and Javier's men returned fire, their rifles cracking. Clara dove behind a rock, her stolen rifle shaking in her hands. Elias grabbed her, pulling her toward the shaft. Now! Lena and Victor covered them, lobbing explosives that shook the ground. The shaft's grate was rusted, and Elias pried it open, his muscles straining. They crawled inside, the metal walls claustrophobic, the air stale. Clara's wound burned, but she kept pace, her heart pounding for Elias. The shaft opened into a dimly lit corridor, its concrete walls lined with cameras. Elias smashed one with his pipe, his movements precise. They know we're here, he whispered. Alarms blared, and boots echoed. Clara gripped her rifle, her resolve steel. We find the kids. They moved deeper, the facility a labyrinth of sterile halls and locked doors. Elias froze at a familiar sight, a heavy steel door, the one he'd never entered, the one with the voices. This is it, he said, his voice trembling. Lena, who'd caught up, hacked a nearby panel, her fingers flying. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber that stole Clara's breath. Children, dozens of them, sat in rows, their heads wired to machines that pulsed with blue light. Their eyes were vacant, their movements robotic. Clara choked back a sob. What have they done? Elias staggered, memories flooding back. This is phase 2. They rewrite them, turn them into tools. A voice crackled over an intercom. Subject 47, you've returned. Predictable. Guards stormed in, their rifles raised. Elias swung his pipe, dropping one, while Clara fired, her shots wild but effective. Lena tossed a smoke grenade, the room filling with haze. They fought through, reaching a control console. Elias smashed it, sparks flying, and the machines flickered, some children stirring. We have to free them, Clara shouted, but the intercom voice laughed. You're too late. The process is complete. A boy, no older than 12, stood, his eyes glowing faintly blue. He lunged at Elias, unnaturally fast, his fists like iron. Elias dodged, pain flashing across his face. They're not kids anymore, he yelled. Clara shot the ceiling, pipes bursting, water flooding the room. The distraction gave them a chance to drag the unaffected children out, but the glowing-eyed boy pursued, relentless. Elias tackled him, pinning him down. I'm sorry, he whispered, knocking him out. They fled, carrying 2 girls who clung to Clara, their bodies frail. The facility shook, explosions from Javier's men echoing outside. Lena hacked another door, leading to a hangar where a small plane waited Orion's escape route. Victor, limping, caught up. We take it. Get the kids out. But the intercom voice returned. You think you've won? You've only delayed us. The hangar doors opened, revealing a man with a scarred face, the one from Elias's memories, the one who'd called him Subject 47. He held a detonator. This ends now, Elias charged, his pipe arcing, but the man was ready, his knife slashing Elias's arm. Clara screamed, firing, but the man ducked, triggering the detonator. The facility rumbled, walls cracking. Go! Elias yelled, grappling with the man. Clara hesitated, but Lena pulled her toward the plane, the girls in tow. Victor started the engine, its roar deafening. Elias broke free, sprinting to them as the hangar collapsed. They took off, the plane shaking, the jungle shrinking below. Clara held Elias, blood seeping from his wound, the girls trembling beside her. The facility burned, but the scarred man's words lingered. Orion wasn't finished. Clara looked at the children, then at Elias, her resolve unbreakable. "We'll stop them," she vowed. Elias nodded, his eyes fierce. "For Matteo, for all of them." The stolen plane shuddered through the turbulent skies, its engines straining as Victor wrestled with the controls, the jungle's green expanse fading below. Clara clutched Elias's hand, her fingers stained with his blood from the knife wound on his arm. The two rescued girls, pale and trembling, huddled beside Lena, their eyes wide with fear. The cockpit radio crackled, Nico's voice breaking through static. "I've got a lock on Orion's hub coordinates in Brazil, near Manaus. It's their nerve center. You hit that, you cripple them." Clara's jaw tightened. "Then that's where we're going." Elias, his face pale but resolute, nodded. "It ends tonight." The plane banked north, the weight of their mission pressing down like the storm clouds ahead. Lena patched Elias's wound with a med kit from the plane, her hands steady despite her own bruises. "You sure about this, kid?" she asked. Elias's eyes burned. "They took everything from me, from all of us. No more running." Victor called from the cockpit. "We've got Company 2 choppers, closing fast." Clara peered out the window, spotting the black helicopters, their rotors slicing the air. Orion wasn't letting them go. "Can we outrun them?" she asked. Victor's grim smile was answer enough. "Hold on." He pushed the plane into a dive, the girls screaming as the world tilted. Bullets pinged off the fuselage, and Clara shielded the children, her heart pounding. Lena grabbed a flare gun, leaning out the side door. "Eat this," she shouted, firing. The flare struck a chopper's rotor, sending it spiraling into the trees, a fireball lighting the night. The second chopper veered off, but not before launching a missile. Victor yanked the controls, the plane lurching, but the explosion grazed the wing, smoke trailing. "We're losing altitude," he yelled. Elias unbuckled, staggering to the cockpit. "There's a clearing ahead. Crash land." Clara grabbed his arm. "No, you stay with me." But he was already moving, helping Victor guide the plane. The jungle rushed up, trees snapping as the plane skidded, metal groaning. Clara braced, holding the girls, until the world stopped spinning. They were alive, but the plane was wreckage. "Move!" Elias shouted, kicking open a hatch. They scrambled out, the second chopper circling above, its spotlight blinding. Orion's men rappelled down, rifles flashing. Elias swung his pipe, cracking a soldier's helmet, while Lena fired her taser, dropping another. Clara ushered the girls behind a fallen log, her stolen rifle shaking in her hands. Victor, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead, tossed a grenade, the blast scattering the attackers. "Head for the coordinates," he roared. They ran, the jungle a blur of vines and shadows, the chopper's gunfire chewing the ground. Nico's coordinates led to a fortified compound, its concrete walls topped with razor wire, drones patrolling the skies. This was Orion's heart, where the scarred Manth puppet masterweighted. Elias took point, his movements fluid, leading them to a drainage tunnel beneath the walls. "This is how I got out last time," he said, prying open a grate. Clara's stomach churned at the thought of her son crawling through this hell before. Inside, the tunnel was dank, water sloshing at their ankles. Alarms wailed above, Orion alerted to their breach. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with servers, screens displaying data children's faces, vital signs, neural patterns. Clara's blood ran cold. "This is their control room," Lena whispered. Elias froze, his eyes locked on a screen showing a boy, no older than 10, wired to a machine, his face blank. "Matteo," he choked, the name a wound. Clara touched his shoulder, but he pulled away, rage overtaking grief. Footsteps echoed, and the scarred man stepped into the light, his knife glinting. "Subject 47, he said, his voice cold. "You've caused enough trouble." Elias gripped his pipe, his knuckles white. "You took my life, my friends. Why?" The man smirked. "Progress. You were raw material, shaped for a new world. Pity you resisted." Clara raised her rifle, but the man was faster, throwing a flashbang. The room erupted in light and sound, disorienting them. Soldiers poured in, and chaos reigned. Elias lunged at the scarred man, their fight a blur of steel and fury. Clara fired, dropping a soldier, but a bullet grazed her leg and she fell, pain searing. Lena dragged her behind a server, tasing an attacker, while Victor fought hand to hand, his strength fading. The girls screamed, hiding under a console. Elias and the scarred man traded blows, the pipe against the knife, blood splattering the floor. "You can't stop us," the man hissed. "Orion's bigger than me," Elias roared, driving the pipe into the man's shoulder, pinning him to a wall. "Then I'll burn it all down." He twisted the pipe, and the man gasped, dropping the knife. But a new threat emerged. Drones, armed with tasers, swarmed the room. Lena hacked a terminal, overriding their controls, sending them crashing. Victor tackled another soldier, but a blade caught his side, and he collapsed, blood pooling. Clara crawled to him, her vision blurring. "Stay with us," she begged. Victor's smile was weak. "Finish this for me." Elias dragged the scarred man to the main console, forcing his hand onto a biometric scanner. "Open it," he demanded. The man laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. "You'll wish you hadn't." The console beeped, and a hidden door opened, revealing a vault of files: Orion's plans, client lists, locations of other facilities. Lena grabbed a drive, downloading it all. "This'll bury them," she said. But the compound shook, explosives detonating. The scarred man had triggered a failsafe. "You die with us," he rasped. Elias knocked him out, turning to Clara. "We have to go." She struggled to her feet, her legs screaming, and helped the girls. Lena carried the drive, and Elias supported Victor, whose breaths were shallow. They fled through collapsing halls, flames licking the walls. Drones chased, but Elias smashed them, his strength relentless. They reached the jungle as the compound erupted, a fireball lighting the sky. Clara collapsed, clutching Elias, the girls sobbing beside her. Victor's eyes fluttered shut, his hand limp. Lena checked his pulse, her face grim. "He's gone." Clara's tears fell, but Elias's voice cut through. "He gave us a chance. We use it." The drive in Lena's hand held Orion's secrets, the key to justice. But the cost was heavy, and the fight wasn't over. Clara held her son, vowing to end Orion, for Victor, for Mateo, for every child they'd broken. The jungle's embers glowed behind them, the ruins of Orion's compound, a testament to their defiance. Clara limped through the undergrowth, her leg throbbing, but her grip on Elias's hand was unyielding. The two rescued girls, Anna and Sophia, clung to Lena, their frail bodies wrapped in blankets scavenged from the plane's wreckage. The data drive, now in Lena's pack, pulsed with Orion's secrets, client lists, facility locations, and the chilling scope of their experiments. The weight of Victor's sacrifice hung heavy, his final words echoing in Clara's mind. "Finish this." Dawn broke over the Amazon, its golden light cutting through the mist. Elias, his arm bandaged but his eyes fierce, led them to a riverbank where Javier's people waited, their boats ready. "You're safe now," Javier said, his weathered face softening. "But the world must know." Clara nodded, her resolve steel. They will. The journey to Manaus was grueling, the boats rocking through rapids, but Elias's presence anchored Clara. He was her son, scarred but unbroken, and she'd fight to give him the life Orion stole. In Manaus, Lena contacted Nico, who'd gone underground after Orion hacked his systems. "I'm routing the drive's data to every major news outlet," he said over a secure line. "Interpol's already moving on the coordinates. Orion's done." But Clara knew it wasn't over. Not until Elias was whole. They checked into a safe house, a nondescript apartment overlooking the city's bustling streets. Anna and Sophia, barely speaking, curled up on a couch, their eyes haunted. Clara sat with them, her voice gentle. "You're free now. We'll find your families." Sophia's lip trembled. "What if they're gone?" Clara's heart ached, but she smiled. "Then you'll have us." Elias watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Lena approached, handing him a glass of water. "You okay, kid?" He shook his head, his voice low. "I keep hearing them. Mateo, the others. They didn't make it." Lena's jaw tightened. "You did, and you're going to make sure their deaths mean something." He nodded, clutching the faded photo of Clara, its edges worn from years of hope. That night, the news broke. Headlines screamed, "Global conspiracy exposed. Children stolen for experiments." The drive's data revealed Orion's reach politicians, corporations, even military contractors funding the program. Protests erupted worldwide, demanding justice. Interpol raided Orion's remaining facilities, freeing dozens of children, though many, like those in the glowing-eyed room, were too far gone. Clara watched the reports, her heart torn between relief and grief. Elias sat beside her, his silence heavy. "I don't know how to be normal," he admitted. "They made me a weapon." Clara took his face in her hands, her eyes fierce. "You're my son. That's enough. We'll figure out the rest together." He leaned into her, the first crack in his armor, and she held him, tears falling. The days blurred into weeks. Clara and Elias returned to Paris, where their old home waited, its walls filled with memories of a boy who'd never stopped fighting to come back. Lena stayed in Brazil, working with authorities to reunite the rescued children, while Nico's leaks kept Orion's backers on the run. Anna and Sophia, whose families were lost to Orion's schemes, moved in with Clara, their laughter slowly returning as they played in the garden. Elias struggled, waking from nightmares of the facility, but Clara was there, her presence a lifeline. Therapy helped, a quiet woman named Dr. Moreau who specialized in trauma. "You're not defined by what they did," she told Elias. "You choose who you are now." He took it one day at a time, finding solace in small things, cooking with Clara, teaching Anna to ride a bike, sketching the jungle he'd survived. One afternoon, he found an old camera in the attic, Clara's from her photography days. "You used to love this," he said, holding it up. She smiled, dusting it off. "Maybe we both can." They started taking photos together, capturing Paris's streets, the girls' smiles, moments of light after years of dark. Elias's sketches turned to portraits, his pencil tracing Mateo's face, a way to honor the friend who'd saved him. A year later, Clara stood before a crowd in Geneva. The data drives evidence now a global case. She spoke as a mother, her voice steady. "Orion took my son, but we took them down. For every child they hurt, we'll keep fighting." Elias stood beside her, taller now, his bare feet replaced by sneakers, the photo of her tucked in his pocket. The crowd roared, and Anna and Sophia cheered, their faces bright. Justice wasn't perfect. Some of Orion's leaders vanished, their wealth shielding them, but the world knew, and the children were free. Back home, Elias enrolled in school, hesitant but curious, his mind sharp despite the lost years. He joined a boxing club, channeling his training into something his own, and Clara watched, proud as he sparred, his laughter echoing. One evening, they stood on a hill outside Paris, the city's lights twinkling below, the sky clear and endless. Elias looked up, his voice soft. "I used to think I'd never see this again." Clara wrapped an arm around him. "You're here now, and I'm never letting go." He smiled, a real smile, and for the first time, she saw her boy, not the soldier. Anna and Sophia ran up, tugging Elias to chase fireflies, and Clara laughed, her camera clicking, capturing the moment. The scars remained, but they were healing, stitched together by love and purpose. Orion's shadow lingered, but it couldn't touch them anymore. The fight had cost them Victor, Mateo, countless others, but it had given them this, a family, rebuilt from ashes, standing under a sky that no longer held secrets. Clara looked at Elias, his face lit by the stars, and knew they'd won, not just against Orion, but for each other, for a future where no child would be taken again. From a boy vanishing mid-flight to a man exposing a global conspiracy, Elias's fight for justice triumphed. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe with notifications on to catch our newest videos. Don't miss the next thrilling tale.